going to try to give some glimpses from our side of the world about how it is to build a church in a secular society. I'll try my best to say a few things because what happens right now in the world is that stuff is speeding up. It's not so that, it takes a generation before the stuff that we struggle with in the North Atlantic sphere will get to you guys. This is a global village now. We're all connected. The kids in Nairobi and the kids in New Delhi and the kids in Sydney and the kids in Cape Town and in Joburg are all looking at the same stuff happening in the global world. And some of the stuff that we are experiencing in the Scandinavian countries is very much out there. And if we're going to believe the people that look into how liberalism and how the move of individualism, late modernity is taking us, we're going our way. So I'm coming to you from the future. But I'm also here to say today that it is possible because it is He that is building His church. He has told us, seek my kingdom and I will build my church. He has asked us to come close to Him, to come into the vicinity of what He wants. And as we're doing that, it's possible. Peter Berger said in the 60s, as the more knowledge the people will get, the less religion we will have in the world. He wrote a book and said, I was wrong. These are intellectual people. The world is a very religious place, friends. And in that sphere, the gospel of Jesus Christ is clear. It is the only message within the religious sphere that talks about a God that takes on human form, dies on a cross in flesh, rises on the third day to give hope for eternity to all people. Now that is what we have, and that works in the Scandinavian countries, and it's going to work in South Africa. And this is the hope of the world. If you believe it, give the Lord a hand. But what we need people that are willing to stand. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about the willingness to stand in this tension, to stand in this very odd time of church being attacked and people are scratching at the surfaces and the world is very polarized. I mean, how can we stand in this culture? There was this kid, she was in science class, and her teacher didn't like the fact that she came from a Christian home. She had gone to Sunday school, and then the teacher says, whales do not eat human beings. Now, that's true. The science teacher is teaching this. And whales, in fact, they do not eat human beings. But the kid had been to Sunday school and learned that Jonah was eaten by a whale. So she said, but honestly, what about Jonah then? And then she said, no, Jonah didn't. No, that didn't happen. Well, when I come to heaven, she said, I'm going to ask Jonah whether he was eaten by a whale. And then the science teacher said, well, what if he didn't get to heaven? What if he went the other way? And the kid said, no, you ask him. It takes some attitude, all right? It takes some attitude. So my story was I grew up in the second largest Pentecostal church in the city. Felt a call from God to go into the ministry when I grew up. Was told by my senior pastor to go to school, get some training before you start. So we did. My wife and I, we moved to America, studied theology for many years. Came back to the same church, was a youth pastor for 4 years. The church was growing like crazy. It was fantastic. It was great years, right? And then we planted a church in 2004. We've been leading that church over the last 18 years, and it has grown into a multi-site church. It is still the largest campus in the city we're in, but we have planted churches around the country. And I thought when I was a teenager that when I came to this age, we would, the churches would be full, stuff would be happening. I thought when we came to this point, people would have realized that the gospel is true. But now I've taken my kids through their teenage years, and they kind of have experienced the same thing that I have experienced. The constituency of the Christian church is not that much larger. In the country of Norway, we have about 2% attendance in church on a Sunday. 2%. In a country that still baptizes 75% of the kids are baptized in the Lutheran church. So you have a large nominal constituency, an infrastructure of religion, but it's like a vaccine. People don't get the gospel because they got this package. And there are good Lutheran pastors, but there's also some, people get vaccinated from the gospel. So we live in this city, and in this city we're trying to build a church and reach out to new people. And I said to my pastor back then in 2004, I said to him, honestly, when I look around in the city that we're in, if we go to the Bethel Church, those last names. If we go to the Christian Fellowship Church, we see those last names. And if we go to that church down the street, it's those last names. In churches, over years, it becomes family cluster churches. That's why what we see is the churches in North America right now. I talked to a researcher the other day. The average size of a church in North America right now is 62 people. Now, we know Gateway Church and Elevation and Life Church, but the average of the 350,000 churches in North America, 62. Something happens, and in Norway, I guess it would be around 70, 75 people. But what happens in a church when it becomes a family cluster church is that it becomes those three families kind of rule the turf here, And when that happens, it implodes inwards in a way. And then we need to ask the question, are we then reaching the people that are not reached yet? Or are the sociological factors so strong within what we build that it is too hard for people to access? Are we in fact building bridges out, or are we imploding in? So the eldership and the pastor, they accepted the fact that instead of me taking over that church, which was the plan, they accepted that I would plant a new church. And I said to them, can I please have a go at trying to reach out to some people that don't have a Christian cultural background? See, Norway is not churched. Texas is churched. Alabama is churched. And you speak for South Africa if you want to. I assume South Africa is still churched. We are not churched, and we are not Christian. We are post-Christian. And we need to build the church in a way that it, in fact, reaches out and invites new people into the church. So over these 18 years that we've been running the church, we have, and honestly, it's been fantastic to see that we've been able to build a hospitality culture that we have had new people almost every Sunday for 18 years. And this is a small country. When I told some people in New Delhi, in India, how many people we are in our country, we're 5.2 million people. They said, that's like a bus stop in Delhi. It's a very small country. But God loves those people, and I love the fact that God has given us that turf to work. These are the people that we're going to reach out to, right? But making a stand in culture today is very difficult. One of the things in our culture is that we are very monocultural in the sense that it's very consensus-driven. People are very much doing what their neighbor is doing. So standing out and being different is very difficult. Over the last 10 years, when they looked at youth fashion, people are not dressing to stick out. People are dressing to look the same as the other ones. Because the rebellion is not on the outside any longer. It's the stuff that happens inside of us. And one of the large damages that we are putting on the generation that is growing up today, we're telling them that they should trust all the stuff they think in their own brains and the convictions that they have in their own hearts. And this is a global problem. We tell young people that the stuff that you have in you should be the truth for what you do in your life. And when we do that, Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish theologian and philosopher, says, many choices, much angst. And that's what we're putting on the young generation today. We're telling them that you guys should be in charge of your own path through life. And we need to choose whether we are this or that, whether we are attracted to this or that, whether we should live that way or that way. And it should not be connected to what our parents or our grandparents or our pastor thinks we should do. So we're pushed into this. We're moving by ourselves as an individual in life. And I think that's where we need to start talking about secularism. That's where we need to talk about what the Word of God can teach us about, in fact, making a stand. I brought a picture that I saw in 1989. Never forgotten this picture. It's from the square in Beijing. This man is a student. He's with the student riots, standing in front of a tank. We don't know who this man is. But what we do know is that this picture has become an iconic picture about a student revolt against the Communist Party in China. Now, we do not know how China would look today if he would not stand, but we do know that it got global attention and that it did change some things. And I'm not going to talk about Chinese politics here, but the thing is, that man dared to stand because he believed in something. When I was a student in the United States, we learned about racial reconciliation and about the civil rights movement. And we all know Martin Luther King, the Baptist preacher, fantastic leader. But we also learned about Rosa Parks. Now, Rosa Parks did not want to stand up in the back of that bus because she thought that the color of my skin should not determine whether I should sit here or there. So she just made a stand by sitting down and saying, I'm not moving. And she became a symbol and helped out in the civil rights movement that really gave freedom to those people in North America. One of the great things about being from a small country that's peace-loving and in many ways diplomatic in the world scene is that we get to hand out the Nobel Peace Prize. And a few years ago, we handed out the Nobel Peace Prize to, and that's not a joke, we handed out the Nobel Peace Prize to Malala. I brought a picture of Malala. You see her wounds. They went after her psychologically and physically, but she said, I will stand. Because kids, girls in Pakistan should have an education. It's not okay that the girls do not get an education. Tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of Pakistani girls have an education today because someone stands. When Jesus says goodbye to his disciples, between John 13 and John 17, he talks to them about how life will be now that he leaves them. And he says to them, I want you to be in the world, but I don't want you to be off the world. I cannot promise you a smooth life. There will be persecution, but we will pray that God will keep you from the evil one. But you need to get your prepositions right. I learned German in school, and it was all about prepositions. If you get the wrong preposition, everything else in the sentence goes wrong. So Jesus is very clear that we are going to be in, but we are not going to be off. And the fact that we are going to be in and not off is very, very important for tonight's message. If you're going to be in this thing, you need to make sure that you're not off where you are in. Because being off where you are in is just going to make a mess out of everything. So in Bergen, Norway, in Europe, we have these church bells that are ringing. Now, church bells are awesome because around 10:30 in the morning in any European city, they will ring, They will ring to say it's soon time to go to church, And yes, Bergen was the capital for about 2 days, 1,000 years ago. Now, but when those bells are ringing, they were meant to give an audio reminder to the people. It's time for God. It's time for God now. And we wouldn't build in our cities any high-rises that would go above the towers of the churches. Because when you had a visual of the fact that I look to the mountain, but I see a cross on the top of them, I see the church. I hear the church. Now that is a sound and a sight that you'll see in Europe all over. No one cares. And the problem is that all of these reminders, they are around us all the time. In our calendar in Norway, we have calendars, and they give us an extra day off in Pentecost. They give us extra days off in Easter. They give us extra days off on the Ascension Day. I mean, we are loaded with days off connected to the red letters in our calendar. But when we ask people in surveys, do you know what Pentecost is? 25% knows what Pentecost is, and they're all above 60 years. See, that's secularism. Secularism, friends, is about forgetting. It's about forgetting the stuff. We take a majority of young ninth graders through confirmation every year, but we forget. So I was a teenager. I went from the suburb where I grew up, from my mates, when they started doing stuff that I felt I shouldn't be doing that. I'll go to church instead. I've taken my kids through the same thing. And I think, and I do still believe that is a good place to draw the line. That at some point, you just have to figure out, how do I navigate my relationships? How do I navigate my values? How do I navigate who I honor? And how do I navigate how I orient my life? That's why the theme of this conference is so important. We need to build the church so that the church becomes that community of hope. And sometimes, friends, it is not about the amount of people joining that church. And that's one of the things that we just have had to realize in our part of the world. See, when I had my visions and dreams when I was a teenager, and I still have visions and dreams, but honestly, friends, I thought that Reinhard Bunke, he could come and preach for me when I had the whole city in the church. The visions that God give us in a season, we have to handle. How do we hold on to them when the terrain does not look like that? So one of the most important things that I've had to do, and this is a personal thing, I'm 47 years old now. My daughter's getting married next summer. I'm not giving up, but I've had to do one very serious thing with my life. I've had to move the anchor of what I do from success to faithfulness. Because what happens when you move your anchor from success to faithfulness is that you stop living off of the results that you see in the ministry you do, to the fact that the gospel is true. Christ died and rose again and sent the power over my life. So whether the church is small or large, whether something happens or doesn't happen, it is in the faithfulness of just standing. That's the place of comfort and power, no matter what happens around us. See, one of the things that happens in a secular culture is that people start reducing religion and faith to a set of rules. That's where the fight starts. People draw a line sideways like this, and they want to make religion and faith into a discussion about morals and values. Is this okay? Is that not okay? How come that you are too strict? It's too much morals. You guys are too judging. Why are you doing that? So I've had thousands of kids come to Bergen in our church over the 22 years, young people, and every time there are some people that want to fight the line. They want to fight the line. They want to talk about, they want to reduce what we do to what would Jesus do. But what would Jesus do is not something we should have on our wrist. It's something that should be written in our heart. And friends, Pentecostal people, listen to me now when I say this. Don't draw the line that way first. Draw the line this way first. Pentecostal preaching is about Jesus being the Lord of our lives. Pentecostal preaching should stay simple enough so that it can remain in power. Pentecostal preaching is about the fact that God intervenes in the world through his Son, by his Spirit, and changes people's lives. See, we do not know who the next person is that's going to come to faith in Jesus. We have absolutely no clue. Whether it is that electrician, whether it's that nurse, that neighborhood soccer mom, or the doctor at the hospital, we have no clue who the next one is that's going to come and believe in Jesus Christ. And we as Pentecostal people, please, we do got to remember this. Seymour said this in Azusa Street. He said, now you don't go out of here speaking in tongues. You go out of here speaking about Jesus. We are Pentecostal people, but the book of Acts, in the first couple of verses, it's the tongues coming. But it is coming on a message about Jesus. And it is when Jesus is made clear for people that they come to faith in him. And Peter gives them the opportunity to turn around and join the local church. And the local church is being born that day. From verse 42 to 47 in that chapter. The church is born when Jesus is preached. It's the same thing that we see in Matthew, I believe it's chapter 16. Jesus asked his disciples, who do you say I am? And they say, these people say, and these people say, and then he says, who do you say I am? And then Peter says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And then Jesus says, this, my friend, did you not find on YouTube? This is not a download from Google. This is something that God showed you. And on this confession, I will build my church. Now, he does not mention church before he sees who Jesus is. It's a vital connection between gospel presentation and building the church. And that, in the gospel story, is where we need to make a stand. The gospel of Jesus, friends, is what we need to make a stand in. And let's not start with the moral lines. Let's not start with the quarreling. Let us start with the testimony and then lead it to a good life. One of the narratives that I find great comfort in, and I will share this with you tonight, is the story of Daniel as he is moved away from his home city, Jerusalem, in 605 before Christ to Babylon. Now, this is a room full of preachers, so you probably know the story, but I want to open that story up and share with you how it is to be in somewhere without being of that place. Because what happens with Daniel is that he comes to Babylon, he's exiled, he's moved there together with some of his mates, and as they're coming in through the gates of Babylon, can you envision this, 90-kilometer city walls, some places 90-meter tall city walls, and he's there in his sandals, he steps into a foreign land, and as he does, he is catching his breath and thinking, how am I going to handle this? Maybe he thought about those verses in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8, in verse 2, when it says, you shall remember the long road that the Lord has led you. Verse 11, make sure that you do not forget the Lord your God. Pastor Byron has asked me to talk about secularism. Secularism is forgetting. That's what secularism is. Secularism is me standing out on a soccer field a Sunday morning, 10:30 in the morning. It's not legal, actually, to have soccer games and sports stuff happening between the hours of 11 and 1 o'clock. Who cares? The bells are ringing, and I'm looking at the parents. No one cares. See, secularism is about forgetting. So the priest, the elderly priest, they're saying, please, can we sing a psalm in this funeral? Because now everyone can just choose the favorite rock song they liked to play when they went jogging. When we look at the red letters in the red numbers in the calendar, we just think about our next vacation. When we contemplate whether we should go to church, we say we'll go next time when there is a wedding. Daniel is stepping in to a place, and he is just knowing this fact that, you know what? I got to make sure that I remember God, and I got to make sure that I don't forget. I got to remember, I have to not forget. Let's read together from Daniel chapter 1, verse 4 to 7. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. Now, in those 4 verses is a massive assimilation program. That's secularism for you. Change the language, change the culture, give them new knowledge, teach them the narrative and history of another people, give them a new worldview, introduce a new religion, and if that's not enough, when you call them in for supper, use a new name. See, when you do that, you can without force overtake a generation. Now that, my friends, my heart is bleeding, but we are losing 70% of the young people that grow up in church. 2 out of 3 say thank you when they're done with Sunday school and their tweens years. We have massive challenges in the way we do church and build church. So I'm not here with a success story, but I'm here with a heart's cry also from the Nordic countries to you, maybe a little bit earlier than we were warned. Make sure, friends, that as you build the church, that you teach to your kids, your teens, your young adults, and your adults to make a stand. How did Daniel make his stand? Key, number 1, we find in verse 8, it says, Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. He made a decision in his heart. Now, to not defile yourself, this word, to not make yourself unclean, was a word that showed up in the exile literature. It was a word that was not there before the exile literature came. But you'll find these words in Isaiah, in the Ecclesiastes, in Zephaniah, in Malachi, Ezra, and Nehemiah. Those books all have the word, I will not defile myself. Reason being, when you're in a culture where you are a minority, you have to draw a line. You have to find language to where you draw the line. So friends in South Africa, I'm encouraging you, and I'm encouraging you, and I'm speaking faith into you. It's possible to stand in this thing, but you got to figure out the language of standing. You got to figure out where to draw the line. And the wisdom of Daniel is this, that Daniel had something, he did some serious formation in his heart at one point in his life. It says in chapter 5 verse 12 and 6 verse 4, it says that Daniel had a high spirit. Depending on your translation, he had a high spirit. He had an exceptional spirit with him. People of the Spirit, I believe this is our contribution to the global Christian church. We can seriously talk about the phenomenon of Holy Spirit meeting people, forming us, enlightening us, and giving us these encounters. I've met so many people that are backslidden, but then never can escape the fact that at one point in my life, God met me in such a way that I can't run away from him. My body remembers the fact that the God is alive, but I don't live. People live backslidden, but confessing the fact that God is alive. That's secularism for you. Secularism is forgetting. That's why a Swedish writer, he says, secularism is not something that happens from the outside and in. Secularism is something that happens from inside the church and out. It's every visitation you don't do. It's every time you don't go to church. It's every funeral where you don't read the scriptures. It's every child dedication that you don't show up to and give a blessing. We secularize the church from the inside by stop doing the stands. Let's make sure that we continue on building. Let's continue on being in those core practices of what church is all about. Listening in to what the Spirit is speaking to us. Daniel has this high spirit in him. What if we would have a generation of young people that says, you know what, I'm gonna stand with Daniel. I mean, we have a children's song that says that. I'm gonna stand like Daniel. And then what is so wise about Daniel is that he makes a decision to draw the line, and he is not drawing a line that is impossible to draw. Now, it's not a very complicated decision that he's making. He basically makes the decision not to eat of the king's food. He could have said, I want lobster for breakfast because I'm very important and religious, so please cater to my needs. He could have said, forever I will not tolerate the food that you give me. No, he didn't do that. He made a very simple, Very simple agreement, because he drew the line in a place to make a stand. A couple of reasons why he made the food be the reason that he would choose. We sing for the food in Norway. A very, very simple, childish song. It goes like this: you who gives food to the little bird, thank you for giving food to us also. And now most people know that song. And it's very childish, and it sounds very stupid when I say it like that. But we dedicate our food. We say, God, you, and that's what they did in Babylon. But they gave the food to other gods before they put it on the table. So Daniel said, I cannot eat food that's given to another god. I have a God. And then if you put the food on the king's table, it would mean friendship with Daniel and the king if he would eat it right there. So he would say, then the king could say that now he's my man. But Daniel said, I can work for him, but he ain't getting my heart. So he's making sure that what he does is that he draws the line in a place where it is not crazy. It's plausible. It's possible to stay there. All right? So he finds a way. We're still the Christian constituency here. We're still the Christian church here. This is where we stand. But we make sure that we draw the line. I adore the youth ministries that I meet in the fjords and the hills of Norway. I can come to a place and it's maybe 30, 40 kids, And they have a music band and they all want to look like Planet Shakers and Hillsong. And they think they're in Wembley Stadium when they're playing and it's 4 people in the room. And I'm thinking, I think this is so awesome. Instead of being at the party, they chose to be in the church. It's fantastic. But when you're going to take the changes that happens in your life. See, I've seen thousands of young people come to Bergen over the last few years. And as they're coming, these young people to our church, they are not exactly ready and up for making all the decisions by themselves. See, making decisions when you are at home, you have your parents around you and you have your youth pastor around you is one thing. But stepping out, making the decisions all by yourself is way something different. But as you're stepping out to make those decisions, it is what is in your heart. So Daniel, he resolved not to defile himself with royal food and wine. Isn't that what the text says? He will not defile himself with the royal food and wine. And then the verse after says that then God gave him favor with the chief of the officials. So first he makes the decision. Then God. Book of Hebrews chapter 11 verse 6. God enjoys the people that has faith in him. So the cafeteria would be sitting out like this and they would sit in groups of 4 as they were moving along and they would come into the room with trays. Big meat, beautiful meat, red wine from Cape Town, and they would feed the boys at the tables. But then there was one table. Not outside, but inside the same cafeteria. 4 boys. And the chief of the officials, he would come with a tray. Simple food. Simple food that you eat in hot weather. Water and beans and easy greens. And they would put it on the table for the 4 boys. And the other ones, they would Snapchat them. Hey, moralists over there, huh? They would be yelling, hey, your grandparents don't see you now. Hey, what's up with you? Fundamentalist. Haters. Religious people. But then the time went on, and the time went on. They took the risk. But then it says, when the days, and at the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier, better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the God took away their choice of food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. Isn't that fantastic? I don't need to make a stand. I don't have to go into a demonstration. I just make this short, very small stand. It's not going to cost you lobsters for lunch. It's just vegetables. But this is where I draw the line. This is where I know that I stand. That's why I stand like this. And the four boys, it says, in the four boys, next text, these four men, young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kind of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. Now remember, he's in a culture where he is learning new languages in school. Think about your school system in South Africa. Don't be so afraid. They're learning a new culture. Kingdom culture will surpass any culture. They were going to get new knowledge. Just make sure that that's not the only knowledge. They're learning other histories and other perspectives and other religions, but multiculturalism has never killed the church. But it has at times helped us come up with, so what is it that we believe in then? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. We need to go to the last text because due to time here. We will read from verse 19 to 21. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about the king's questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. The first year of King Cyrus was 60 years after what we read here today. So a nation has 60 years forecast of presence due to the fact that one man is standing. See, I believe, I'm absolutely positive, church has gone like this for 2,000 years. Some places we win, some places we lose. But if we can stay close to the fact that Jesus Christ died in flesh, rose from the dead, sent his spirit, that's the mark that we're living in. And if we would make a stand, that's where we will anchor up. As we're anchoring up at that place, then the forecast for the kingdom is a good forecast. But I also have to tell you that we have European nations where people did not stand. From Thursday to next Saturday, I'll be traveling different nations in Europe, doing some conferences. And I'll go to some places that are so few Christians. I'll go to the Baltic nations on the border to Russia. We'll have a church planting conference in Riga. The little nation of Estonia right above there. It's the least religious country in the world. Few people. Hungary, just a few people. And then nationalism rises, regionalism rises, and becomes the new religion for people. That's why we need just a few people that would I will just stand. I will stand for my city. I will stand for my county. I will stand for my nation. Because Jesus has asked us, he was very clear when he said, I want you to be in this thing, but not of this thing. And pray that you will be protected from the evil. Stick to my truth. You can read this in John 15 when you come on. Stick to the truth, but accept the tension. Stick to the truth, but accept the tension, because there is a purpose for you standing. See, I believe that God uses us in a time like this. He challenges us with his message, an example of his servant Daniel. Let's make a stand. Let's stand together. Holy Spirit, thank you for being in this building. Holy Spirit. Preparing for this message tonight, obviously I'm here to do a lot of teaching and stuff, but I felt that tonight's message was about making that stand. And I want to echo pastor that spoke before me here and say that if you came to this conference and you're exhausted and you're tired and you're wondering whether it makes a difference, what you're doing in your city, what you are doing in your town, and you feel that people are not respecting the work that you do, and even the constituency of the church and the neighbor Christians and the family, they're just shaking their head and they're thinking, well, what are you up to? You're building a dream building in your head. And the Lord is speaking to you tonight, and he's saying, if you will just stand, then there are generations in the future that will harvest from your faithfulness. And the Spirit is saying that I will give you power. The Spirit is saying I will give you new truth. The Spirit is saying I will teach you to live in the tension. The Spirit is saying I will take care of you from the evil one. With every eye closed in this room, I'm not going to put anyone on the spot or draw you to the front here, but if you're here and it makes sense to you that the Lord is speaking to you tonight, and you want to say, I'm here and I'm willing to make a stand, you just raise your hand right now. I'm going to pray faith into your life. Father, thank you for every hand that goes up into the air in this auditorium this evening. Father, thank you. Thank you for your servants that has started a journey on a long path following you. Lord, right now, as we are seeing a tsunami of change happening to the global culture, as we are seeing secularism, the forgetting, the not remembering, the I don't care mentalities coming all over the world, may you protect every single leader in this room. May you give us the spirit of Daniel in this room so that we will be faithful servants standing. May you not make us into demonstrators. May you not make us into haters and strong-willed people that destroy the gospel by sending the wrong messages out. But must you give us the gospel at the top of our tongue, at the top of our heart, at the front of our frontal cortex, so that we live off the gospel truth in our lives. And I pray for many of the people in this room where success has not become the way you thought it would be. I pray over your life, move your anchor right now to the fact that he is risen, that the Spirit has come, that there is life. God bless you all in the name of Jesus. Amen.